makes sense.
All right. Hey, we're running it back.
Take two.
Yeah. Welcome back to Creatives POV. I'm Noah.
I'm Ethan.
I'm Marquis.
And we have a special guest today, Maggie, Somos Studios. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Maggie.
Okay, hello, take two. So now I got to rethink what I said the first time. My name's Maggie. I own Somos Studios. When my elevator speech for Somos Studios is anything creative, we can do that for you, but focus really heavy on like branding, web design, some web development, mostly like really easy web development stuff. And then kind of anything creative, like content creation at times, mostly like photos, some short videos, printing, work a lot with paper, different printed materials, things like that. So
nice.
Yeah.
So how did you get into design?
Okay, so I'm from a really small town in Nebraska. I graduated with like 30 people because I always knew it was small. But then when I moved to the city, I was like, oh, that was like actually very small. It's in the middle of nowhere. There's not even a Walmart.
Oh,
so it's like really small.
Yeah.
And I always, growing up, felt creative, always wanted to do creative things, like a lot of glitter and stuff like that. But I never really took an art class. It never was approach to me like you can really be creative and that's something that you can do with your life. It was always like, if you're going to be a creative and like pursue art, be ready to be broke, basically. So when I was in high school and then you like try to figure out what you're going to do with your life, I just decided to be a nurse because I felt like that was the only option. And I went to UNO when I graduated, which is in Omaha. And then I was doing nursing, and then I transferred at semester to UNL in Lincoln. And then I was just kind of sick of being in Nebraska. So I transferred to Des Moines to go to Grandview, do nursing. But the entire time I was just like, I did like a print business while in nursing school. I opened like an Etsy shop selling prints that I would make on Photoshop. And I was always trying to make my presentations really pretty and like have the best aesthetic PowerPoint you've ever seen in the nursing program. And then I was like, I don't think that's important to nurses to like care what your stuff looks like. And then I just decided it just wasn't for me. So I left nursing, did like a semester at Grandview of so many different things like business, social work, so many things. I was like, well, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I can't not do college, I guess. So did that. And then I was walking through the art building one day and I just saw these like posters that were made by like the senior design students for their, I think it was like a capstone project or something. And I just loved it. And I was like, I think I could do that. And so then I literally was just like, well, I'm going to do design. I'm going to do graphic design.
Nice.
So it's roundabout way.
Yeah. So after Grandview, where did your journey go next?
Okay, so when I was at Grandview, I had two majors. So I did graphic design and I did Spanish, and I was always really into Spanish, but I knew when I was doing that I would never actually learn Spanish unless I moved somewhere where they spoke Spanish. So in like a little intern period in college, I moved to Mexico. And it was central Mexico, so it wasn't like touristy Mexico. And so I had that base. And when I graduated college, I moved back to that same city. And I worked in a design agency in that city in Mexico. So that was the first place I ever had that like into seeing what design in a career could like look like, I guess. So that's where it started for me. Yeah.
Is the creative scene a lot different here in America than Mexico?
I think so. I mean, it's really different too. Like, I feel like they're so heavily community focused in Mexico that like, although the place I worked was kind of interesting, it was 2 floors and the top floor was like the designers. And so they did like the web, the branding, the marketing. They had a lot of like really big clients, even some that like I see their brands in the grocery stores here. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I used to do their social media, stuff like that. But like downstairs was all stuff for parties. So like huge print machines for like banners, and they would do like in-house stickers, and it was crazy. But I think I had such an idea of what was typical for graphic design in the States, and like everything I had learned in college with like the rules and the like thinking of like the cultural significance it would have like in our area. But then you move there and everything is so different. I mean, the language too, so it's like, yeah, it was a learning curve for sure.
What are some things that like you learned in your time, like living over there and working over there?
Living there, it really opened up my eyes to like the world. I mean, I'm from a small town in Nebraska. I always had like big dreams to like go places, but I never thought like, oh, I'd be living in Mexico, have an apartment in Mexico, drive a car. Like I never thought of that. But when I moved there, it just showed me like the world is so big, which like, duh. But then you get there and you're like, I didn't speak Spanish, and trying to figure everything out was so challenging, but like the people were so kind and so patient, and they have such a good balance too with like just life and work, because nothing is more important than their lives. And I think here we don't like see that a ton. So I try to remember that when I'm freaking out about a project, that I need to just like chill a little,
Yeah. So what led you back to the States then?
I made $3 an hour and I didn't have a savings. So I was like, I gotta get back, save some money, because I really couldn't afford anything. So I was like, okay.
What is that equivalent? This might be a dumb question, but what is that equivalent to here in America? $3.
Well, I mean, so they do like pesos.
Right.
So I was making like, it depends on the exchange rate, but sometimes it's like 18 pesos is like $1 US.
Okay.
So you make like, when you hear like 1,000 pesos, you're like 1,000, that's a lot, but not super a lot.
So you was making $3
USD. Yeah.
Wow.
Have you ever seen like Napoleon Dynamite where he's like, that's like $1 an hour? Yeah. That's what I thought when I found out how much I got paid.
Dang, that's crazy.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So did you come back to Des Moines because of your connection with Grandview then?
Yeah, and like I have cousins here, and then when I moved here, like a few years later, my parents moved to Johnston, so I don't have anybody left in Nebraska.
Yeah.
So I just came back, yeah.
Yeah. And so when you came back, did you just hop straight into your own business, or did you start working for some other places, or like what was that kind of like?
Well, I always wanted to be an artist, and I didn't super care what kind of art it was at the time. But when I was like in college, like my freshman year, I found henna, and I was a henna artist in Des Moines for like 8 years. And that was my full-time gig in college. That's all I did. I mean, I guess I worked like one retail job, but I did henna. So I would travel around the country to like different markets and festivals and fairs and all these things. So I did that. So when I moved back, I was like full time doing henna.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy. So I feel like you've done a lot of traveling over your life.
Because I always was like, I have to be an artist.
Yeah.
Like, I have to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This also might be a dumb question. What country did henna originate from? Because I know it's in multiple countries.
I think it depends who you ask and where they're from. Because like when I was doing henna, I had a lot of clients that were like from Pakistan. I had a lot of clients that were from India and like different regions in India. And like I would ask them and their answers would vary. The people in from Pakistan would say it was from there, and the people in India would say it's from there. So
because I've been to Africa too, and they have henna as well.
Yeah.
So
I used to do it for a lot of like Sudanese parties. I would do henna for those too.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was. I was in Ethiopia, but there's like a lot of like Somali people, Sudanese people, like a bunch of the surrounding countries. Like, they have their representation in Ethiopia as well. But yeah, that's crazy.
Learned a lot from that too. So
So Somos Studios, tell us about the name and like how that originated.
Well, I think like when I lived in Mexico, I knew I would love Mexico, but then I went there and I was like, oh, I really love Mexico. And when I came back to the States, I was doing henna full time. And then every year, like when you get into winter, it's not as popular. So I was like, okay, I got to get a real job. So I worked for a place in Des Moines. And then in 2020, I was like, I think I could do this myself. So I literally one day was like, okay, like I'm going to quit and I'm going to start my own thing. And I did it, and I like filled out an Uber application, and I was like, well, I'll Uber if it doesn't work out, like whatever. There's always ways to do things. But when I was trying to think about like what I wanted to create, I felt like anytime I worked in an agency setting, everything was so heavily focused on like turnaround time, because the faster you turn around projects, the faster you get paid. And it was just like a cycle. And I didn't love that, because I really wanted to know like my clients and things better. And I just felt like I would never get that if I kept in that agency setting. So thinking about like loving the Spanish language and like having my first job in Mexico, like what that taught me and all of that, I really wanted a word that was in Spanish that kind of had like a full meaning. So Somos means we are. And so it kind of comes back to like that collaborative piece that I really wanted to create within my business. Like I wanted my clients to feel a part of the process. Like if they had questions, if they had like ideas, anything they wanted to see, I didn't want them to feel shut off, like they couldn't bring it to the table. So it just means we are.
Yeah.
It's like we're working on it together.
That.
Yeah.
Also, your like wordmark logo. Oh, I just love how you can read it forwards, but also backwards.
And that literally wasn't even on purpose, which is crazy.
Yeah. I just think that's so cool. Yeah. Okay. So talk a little bit about like what Somos Studios, like what you offer, I guess, for people. You kind of touched on it earlier, but like also what kind of clients are you working with right now?
So it's funny because I feel like in any creative industry, like the clients you have is like an ebb and a flow, right? And like the things you offer, sometimes you're really heavy into like just websites. Sometimes it's brand identity and websites. But I feel like lately, and I've been really lucky lately to have clients that want to do everything. So we'll do the brand identity and we'll do the web, but then we also do the creative direction. So like curating the photo shoot, like getting the models, getting the furniture, getting the outfits, like everything, so that when it comes time for web and like social direction, everything has the same aesthetic. So I've worked like recently with 2 clients that did that, and the projects have just been so fun. But I would say mostly it's been a lot of brand identity. And then lately it's been picking up into web, which has been fun.
Yeah. Tell us about yesterday. You did a shoot for a client. Talk to us about like what you did, and then kind of like your process throughout the day, like how you went about.
Okay, well, it was a full day. It was a very long day, but it was like the kind of day when you leave, you're just on a high and you're like, am I really living this life? Like that's so crazy. But they're called the Beauty Pact. They're like a recent client. We're doing brand identity web, and then they did this content creation day for like images and stuff. But it's been a lot. It was a long process to get to this photo shoot. So my friend Ella, who you know, Ella Walker, she's a photographer, and we work together often with clients because we just have similar visual aesthetics, I'd say. So it's just like really seamless to work together with like my clients when I bring her in on a project. And so we thought like, okay, first, usually when I do something like that, we get the brand identity set prior to doing the photo shoot, because we want to know direction, like how we want to position them in the market, all of those different things. So we did their branding. And then we go into, okay, now it's time for the photo shoot. So what's the vibe of the models, and like how many will we need? What do we need for clothing? How many different options? We need to find a studio. How many locations will we shoot in? What kind of furniture? What pieces do we need? Where do we get them from? How do we get them there? It's just a lot of logistics that it's like a lot of moving parts. But then when you see it all come together, it's so cool. And then they come and they get their headshots. The models do their thing. We do like background videos. If they ever want to do them for like reels, things like that. And then Michaela will edit. I'll get them, give them to the client. And then we move into web, where we have the images to like create the website.
Nice.
So
do you do like UX, UI design then with the website?
I have taken, so when I was in college at Grandview, I got like a minor in user experience. And so I know some of it, and I try to really tap into that. But there's really good like resources online, like through Adobe and different things, where you can like test your sites based on like user experience. So I really try to focus on that.
Yeah.
So that it's pretty, but it works, you know? So.
Yeah. As someone that works with a lot of brands, developing like brand identities, is it hard to also work on your own brand and like because you're pouring so much into other people's brands and like bringing those to life. Was it challenging for you to kind of build your brand, and like, do you ever feel that?
Major.
Yeah.
Super. Yeah. I didn't even have like a for real website until like probably January of last year. And I've been in business like 3 years now. So I didn't have like a for real website for like 2 years because I kept telling myself, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. And then I would get busy, and you always put your stuff on the back burner, you know, which makes sense. And then when I got my studio is when I was like, okay, I need to get real, because like, who's going to take me seriously if I'm telling you I'm going to make you a website, we're going to do all this stuff, and then I don't even have it for myself.
Right.
So then it kind of came up. But yeah, I feel like having my studio has made me focus more on like my own brand and how to kind of bring that into the world of like an experience. Yeah.
Tell us about like a project you're most proud of.
Well, okay, I was thinking about that on the way here. I was like, what if he asked me that question? And then I thought, I feel like every time I work on a project, that current project I'm working on is my favorite project because I'm just like so in the moment. I feel like it's all I think about. Every time I'm on Instagram, if I see a picture, I'm like, oh, I'm going to save that because that could be like really stellar for this project or whatever. I'm just so in the world of that. But then when I look back, I like can't pick. It's bizarre.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you use Pinterest to save a lot of stuff, or like do you use Instagram saves feature now?
I would say kind of, yeah. But I also too really love publications. I feel like I get a lot of good inspiration from different publications. So when I work on a project, I'll like literally go to Barnes and Noble and I'll sit in like the magazine area and just like go through things.
I love Barnes and Noble.
Yeah.
I do too. It's really a moment.
What's one of your favorite publications?
Okay, so like I really love Open House magazine. I think they're out of Spain. I really love Arc Journal too. They're really cool. But I also too like really like book publications too, like not ones that come out like seasonally or whatever. So Soft Minimal is a book I really like. Mirage magazine, they're super cool. So there's a lot of different like when you get into like the publication design and you start to look at it, there's some really cool places out there with really stellar inspiration, I feel like, because I feel like things happen in Europe and then they come to the States. And so it's like when you get things from like Amsterdam and you're looking at publications made there and you're like, that's a really cool type layout or things like that. Yeah.
Why do you think that is? Like that stuff kind of starts in Europe and like trickles into the US?
I don't know, but like when I travel in Europe, I feel like they're so chill. And maybe not everybody, and I'm sure it like really heavily depends on where you go. But I have found like with design in the US, and when you look at like Instagram and all these things, it's like 30 things you should never do when it comes to design. And I'm like, it's art. Like, I don't think there can be a ton of rules. And I think that's what's interesting with like European design is like, I mean, obviously you have like the Swiss aesthetic, which is like very like structured, very grid heavy. But I think too, like they're willing to like experiment and it's okay. And if it looks cool, it doesn't necessarily have to make a ton of sense if it just looks cool.
Yeah. So like you view design as art.
I really do. Yeah.
Yeah. Because sometimes I feel like people just, I don't know, like I see a lot of like businesses and whatnot that just like slap a bunch of ads together and just like throw it out there. And like the artisticness of it is like on the back burner, and it's more about like just, it's just for communication. Like we're just going to bombard people with like a bunch of crazy stuff
like
on
just
there.
Get the message across. It doesn't matter what it looks like.
Yeah.
With a deadline. Yeah.
But you're very like aesthetics and like style driven and like.
Yeah, but I think you can do both at the same time if you are intentional about it. And I think that's why like sometimes you don't have that, you know, like as you said, like when you have these like big corporations or like whoever that's just like on a tight timeline and they don't really care about, we just need to get the message out, but they don't think necessarily about the consumer or how it's going to be received. Things like that happen. But I think you can make like really stellar ads and have them make sense and be design focused. Yeah.
What has kind of influenced your style? 'Cause like you lived in Mexico for a while, and like that whole culture, you know, probably inspired you. And then you're just talking about Europe. Like what else inspires you in your style?
I mean, I follow a lot of different designers, and I think I follow quite a few agencies out of Mexico, and I think a lot of the things they do are like kind of boutique-y in a sense, where they're very, I don't know, like everything is so different. And that really inspires me, seeing these people with like larger platforms in terms of design that experiment, and they do things that aren't necessarily trendy, and that doesn't matter to them because they're looking at it through the eyes of like their clients and then their clients' consumer. But then, as I said before, I really love publications, and I think those really inspire me because you get to see like such a story with the imagery, the feeling down to like the paper, how that feels, like the covers, if they embossed them or debossed them or whatever. And then it's just all put together in like this really pretty book. And then you get that and you open it and you feel something. And that just like, I buy books all the time.
Yeah.
Like I have to stop buying books, but I can't do it.
It's a good segue into your studio. And like, you just had your first Friday event, like what, a week ago?
Yeah.
Right. And you're selling books, right? Or like publications?
Yeah. So one of the people I follow out of Mexico, their name is like Savvy Studio. And I was in Mexico City last year and I literally happened to stumble upon their studio. And I saw the sign outside and I was like, oh my God, that's their studio. I had no idea. And I was a fangirl of a designer. Like it was crazy. I felt like I really hit the lottery.
Did you get to meet the people?
No, because they also have a place in New York. But when I walked to I walked up into the building and I was like, maybe I'll just see their studio and like see what's up. But he actually, and I didn't know it at the time, but they had a bookstore out front. So it was like their studio in the back and then like this really beautifully curated bookstore in the front. And it was publications from like indie publishers. So it wasn't like a Barnes and Noble bookstore. Like every book was aesthetic. And so then when I was there, I didn't know I was going to have a studio. And then when I found out I was going to get the studio, I was like, okay, that would be something really cool to incorporate. Like just a few books from these like indie publishers that I really vibe with. And be able to have them look good on my shelves, but also be able to sell them at First Fridays.
Yeah.
So.
Are you gonna ever like take that experience online to like the web as well, where people can buy stuff via your website, or is it just gonna be like a shop like or studio?
Yeah, no,
thing?
I want to put them on my website. I have like my totes for sale on my website, but I hadn't put the books on it yet, and it's on my list. It's on my to-do list. Yeah.
Yeah. Your studio is very nice, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Speak about like First Friday and how that went.
Well, I've never done it before. So it was my very first Friday, and I viewed it as like my open house. So I sent out like invites to like my clients and previous clients and different things like that. And it was a lot of work because I had to have it be like the vibe, the aesthetic. So I had my friend make this like really interesting cheese board on like cinder blocks and stuff. And it worked out so great though. Like the turnout was so cool. I felt really special and I was like, I kind of love that.
Yeah.
And it was just really fun. It was really fun to see all those people. And I mean, I've been in mainframe for like almost a year, but I didn't realize how busy those get because I haven't stuck around for it.
Yeah.
And they're really busy.
Yeah.
So
it kind
was
of blew
cool.
my mind. Me and Ethan were there and we were walking around and like a lot of past guests we've had on were like there too, like with their own tables or rooms or whatever. And so it was cool to just see that community, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Who are some people in Des Moines, like creatives that you surround yourself with and that inspire you and encourage you to keep going?
Well, my friend Ella Walker, the photographer, doesn't live in Des Moines anymore, but she comes back like once a month, I feel. So her, I have a friend named Meredith who I love to call her the Somos brand manager because she really keeps everything in check for me. She's like my go-to person anytime I am like, does this look okay? Or I have a client with like, I have different like aesthetics. Maybe I'm pulled in two different directions. I always check in with her like, okay, this is what I want to go for. How do we make that work? And she just has always a lot of really good ideas. Addie, you know, Addie, I feel like her and I really get each other's brains because we're like, okay, that's cool, but how do we make it weirder? to like push it a little bit further. Like with the cheese board, I was like, I want to have honey dripping on the glass, and then people just wipe it. And I mean, it's just like weird things. And
or
she
like
just
sticking
gets
a
it.
candle in a Brussels sprout or whatever.
Yeah,
it was.
she's like, what do you think about a cauliflower candlestick? And I was like, I love it. Let's do that. But then too, like meeting like Liv from Precious and then Seth from Precious, like they're really cool and like following along with their process too, because I feel like we have different aesthetics, but they are so talented that it's just like following it. It's fun to be like, okay, I don't work inside of the Precious space, but they are my friends. So, you know, that's kind of cool.
Yeah. Who is like a dream client that you would want to work with?
I really, really would love to work with a photographer and make a book.
Ooh.
Like I would love to be able to actually make a publication to where like they provide the imagery, potentially work with a copywriter to have like really strong copy. And then from there, it's like, okay, I get to do the layout and then I get to decide like print wise how we move forward. Like what's the paper, what's the print method, all that.
Would it be like a hardcover book?
I don't know. There's so many different materials out there. So it's like, how do you want to make it look? But there's this, they're called like Period out of Amsterdam, and they make really cool books. And they have one that they made with like cardboard. Like the cover was cardboard. And then it's even like down to like binding. Like if you look at any of that with paper and books, like you can bind it and not have the spine. It can just be the thread that's visible and different things. So
Yeah.
be a lot of like looking into different methods, but yeah.
So what kind of printer do you have? Because if you're printing on a bunch of different materials and stuff, like I'm sure you can't just have like a regular generic.
Yeah,
printer, you
I mean,
know?
I think the world of printing for books is so different because, like, I mean, if you think about it, you'll do a run because anytime you print some sort of publication and you outsource it, right, you have to have minimums. So if it's like 100 books, 200 books, whatever. But they have so many printers that keep everything in line because they'll print the pages in line and then they'll do the next one. But I wouldn't like print the book in-house probably because I don't know how to bind it. But I have outsourced like binding projects to different people, and they like sometimes they'll bind by hand or you can have a machine that binds it. So yeah.
Yeah. And then have you ever thought about like getting into screen printing ever?
Well, I did screen printing in college, but no, it's like hard. I always felt like it was so hard. It takes up so much time, and then like all the materials you need to like burn the screens, let them dry, and then you have to pull them. And I like if you do like a 3-color print, then you have to like make sure everything is really lined up or you're going to mess everything up. And so I used to think that that's something that I would want to do. And then I was like, I'll stick to digital printing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember talking to you and Meredith at one time when I came over to do photos, and you guys were saying something about like y'all were thinking about doing a clothing brand or something, like some sort of a fun passion project to start together. Is that something that you're still thinking about doing with her?
Yeah, we want to make a bag, and we're still like in the process of it. But when you go to like manufacture, there's just so many different things to think about. So it's like we're still like trying to make the pattern and find the right fabric.
Is this like a high end vibe that you would want to go for?
I mean, not high end in terms of like Louis Vuitton high end, but like more, I don't know, maybe I would say, like higher, but not crazy high.
Got it.
Yeah.
Also, with Somos Studios, like, do you see yourself growing the business to a point where you're going to hire on a team and have it be like a small studio? Or are you kind of content right now with it just being yourself?
I've thought about that a lot because right now, like I do have some people that work with me on like specific projects, depending on like the timeline and the scope and different things. But I don't know. I'm always like, I love being a part of everything so much. So I'm like, would I be a bad boss? Because like, how could I give up control? And that's not fair. So I think right now I'm good with just consistency within like my clients and maybe like broadening what I offer service wise. But I don't have any desire to be like a big agency. Yeah.
Okay. Do you see yourself in mainframe for a while, or do you eventually want to even move out and get like a new place?
Well, before I got into Mainframe, I was looking for studio spaces, and I was looking for a studio space for probably like a year and a half. Every time I found somewhere that I felt fit the vibe, it was like 2,000 square feet, 3,000 square feet. And I just didn't want that. I didn't need it.
Is that small or big?
That's
Huge.
big. That's
like
massive.
a warehouse. And I was like, I have a
Dang,
desk.
that's kind of what I need. Yeah.
But
That'd probably be, I think, like almost 3 times the size of this room.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's too much. And I was like, it's just me and my printer. But I think I'll stay in Mainframe unless I find something like really, really stellar. But Mainframe is so nice. I mean, like, I don't have to clean like the outer area to make it presentable for clients. It's really accessible. There's parking. Everybody kind of like does their own thing. Like, you don't have anybody up in your business all the time. So I could see myself expanding inside of Mainframe and getting a larger studio. It's on my list. Told myself if I'm in business 5 years, we're doing it. Yeah.
How do you feel like your brand translates from like a physical, like meeting with clients in person, like your aesthetic transfers to like online? Do you feel like there's cohesiveness there? And how do you accomplish that?
I think so. I think it's like interesting. And I struggled with that a lot before I had my studio because I couldn't curate like that first touch point with my clients, which always really bothered me because if they wanted to hire me, they would see my Instagram that had this like certain aesthetic, but then we'd meet in like a Starbucks.
Right.
And then you're like, okay, well, that's not really the vibe. So being able to have my space and curate it to like my Somos aesthetic and then have things when they come in that I can offer them, like different drinks that are like cute packaging, coasters that say Somos, napkins that say Somos. Like I really wanted to create an experience that was so heavily branded that when they left, they felt like, okay, I'm a part of that because I want them to be a part of that.
Yeah.
I was watching one time, like I think on Vice News, they were interviewing like women entrepreneurs. And there was a girl who made a nail polish brand and she was out of London and they were interviewing her because her nail polish went crazy. It was like every like designer line at Fashion Weeks used it. She got into like Topshop, all this stuff. And they were like, how did you do that? And she was like, everything has to be the vibe. Like your phone case has to be the vibe. If you have anything, right? If anything in your space is not the vibe, you need to get rid of it. So I was like, okay, moving forward, everything has to be the vibe.
Yeah.
So,
that's cool.
But now I think there's consistency between like what they see on Instagram and then when they come and meet me. I don't show myself a lot on Instagram because I don't want it to be focused on me. I don't want to be like an influencer designer. I just want it to be my work. And then when they meet me, have that be like its own thing.
Sure. The vibe, that's an important thing because that's like that it makes up the experience. How do you feel like your vibe influences the work you do for others?
I think that's interesting too. And like, I think every designer kind of knows this. And this is something that I learned in college. And then when I was teaching at Grandview, I was telling them like, we're designers. And so you have to have your own aesthetic because people are going to hire you for that. But then you need to be able to like kind of transport yourself into their brain because when you get a project, you're no longer creating for yourself, you're creating for them. And so I mean, they hire me because they like my style, but then I have to be able to take that style and like manipulate it in different ways for different industries, for different target markets. But I think them seeing like my style on Instagram and my aesthetic just builds like a layer of trust, which I think usually always makes the project go smoother when you like trust who you're working with. So,
yeah. How has like social media helped your business grow?
Well, social media is so hard. I think everybody that has Instagram and is trying to have it be a business, when you ask how's social media, they're like, it sucks.
Yeah.
Because it's so hard to focus on it. But then when you put your effort into it, the reward and like the return is so worth it. But it's just when you're making things like that, you're just always going to be your hardest critic. But it has been so interesting, like some of the clients that I've been able to work with only because of social media. Because I've always thought like, I don't need to be this huge design agency that's like all over the world. I just need to have clients. Maybe they're just in Des Moines, like whoever. But if it like clicks, I'm good with that. And then when I started to take social media, I mean, I should take it more seriously. But when I started to focus on it more, like people reaching out from Arizona, LA, like these big brands sometimes. And I'm like, how did you find me? And then it's
That's
always
awesome.
social media.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's like the farthest away like a client has came from?
I think probably Mexico, like the city that I lived in. I had somebody from there. It'd be fun to work with somebody like in Europe or wherever, but like, I don't know. I don't really think of that very much because I really think the clients that I'm like supposed to work with, I think they're just going to come to me.
Do you see yourself in Des Moines long term?
You know, I do. I love Des Moines, but I love to travel. So I want to do more of that. Like I want to keep that going. I think that COVID threw a wrench in that for everybody, but I love Des Moines. I'm so pro Des Moines. And I always tell people too, like, I don't know what my business would look like if it wasn't in Des Moines. Because people in Des Moines are so stellar and they really trust you. And like, I saw that with Henna, like the clients I got and the way that people word of mouth is so strong here. And then with Somos, like people believing in it and like giving my name out there. I just think Des Moines has been so good for that. Yeah.
What other outlets of creativity do you explore? Like you mentioned you have a Fuji, is it an X-T3?
I have the X100F.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
like that
like
camera.
I'm a big Fuji guy. Like honestly kind of want to buy one just as my secondary
I say
camera.
go for it.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
like you enjoy that stuff.
Yeah, it's interesting because I feel like my first, like aside from the crafting area that I said earlier, but like my first into photography or to creative was like photography. And I didn't like, I mean, we all look back and we're like, that was a terrible photo. But I had always been really into photography. And then like when I moved to Mexico and I wasn't designing a ton because I didn't know much, but I would like go to the markets and photograph the markets and like ask people to take their pictures and all these things. And then I think you can kind of fall into that trap where like, if you have a camera, everybody thinks you're a photographer. Where they're like, can you take my family pictures?
Right.
And you're like, no. But I didn't want to be that kind of photographer. And I have friends that are photographers and I'm like, I'm going to leave that to them. But I like taking photos when it doesn't matter. Like there's no expectations. They can be crap. It doesn't matter. That like, I really love that. But the Fuji has been so great for that because it's so easy to travel with because it's so small.
Yeah. What lens do you have on it?
It just came with a lens.
I think it's like a 28 millimeter
Okay.
a spherical lens. Yeah, I think.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So what is next for Somos Studios? Like anything on the horizon? Any new projects? Any new big things happening within the business?
Well, I feel like my printing has recently started to take off. And I also I just am always exploring in that area, like different materials that I can run through my printer that I have in my studio and like different projects I can do with that because it's just fun when you can create digital, but then bring it into like the real world. So probably trying to focus more on printing. And I also I want to do so many more brands. I just want to do so many. I also I want to focus more on social and have be more consistent with that. But I'm just kind of letting it roll, to be honest.
What kind of content do you want to put out? Do you just want to have more portfolio type of work from your past clients, or do you want to create more process type content of how you do what you do? What does that look like? I
feel like I have a lot of projects that I work on that I never post about because I just don't make the posts. I love the projects. So I think putting more out there on that. But I also too want to start getting into reels and showing the process because I love watching those, but it's just so much work to edit videos like that.
Yeah.
You 3 hours of work and
that's
15 seconds.
I feel right now. I feel learning how to edit videos is just one more thing on my plate of a million things on my plate already. But I mean,
right.
It's a goal.
From someone who professionally like does that. Like my job is to edit videos and cut. I've started like finding the beauty in just like not even like cutting it the way like aesthetically it would look, and just like last night I took a bunch of concert videos and I just have it reel in my drafts, and I'm just like, I'll post it whenever I feel the time is right, you know, and they're not like anything super, I don't know, inspiring so much, but it's like I think people on social media are more or less just focused on seeing a moment in time than seeing like, and like what that moment embodies more than like how cool you can capture the moment.
Or like the sound design in it, or I think social media is,
I think there's a place for both, because like like the ad I created for Envy, you know, like all that audio sound design, like none of it is, you know, actually the shop like door opening or closing, like all that is fake. But then like other stuff, it's like, nah, I just, you know, I just took a video and threw it on Instagram,
which I think people do like.
Yeah,
like I think people like that like real world video because they feel like they're in it kind of with you. But yeah, it's difficult. At times.
Both have their place.
But I agree. I think it's like honestly just setting it up, like getting the tripod out of the closet and just putting your phone on the tripod. Like it's not that hard,
just
but it's like right.
Yeah,
it's
but I am that lazy.
Yeah.
I'm like, nah.
Right.
Yeah. Are you someone that's like conscious of the grid? Because like I am, and I'm a designer, and I feel like I think about it a lot. But like, are you that way? And does that kind of stop you from maybe posting that work that you do for a client because it's not matching, like whether it's color or like style or whatever?
I mean, yeah, as I told you earlier before we started, I was like, I've literally archived my Instagram for Somos like at least 3 times because I'm like, okay, I've changed the style now or whatever. But I want to show off all the projects that I work with because I have like yet to have a bad client. I've never had a bad client. Everybody I've ever worked with it's been so cosmic because it's just flowed so well and they've been so great to work with. But then I'm like, it's taking those assets and finding a way, like content that you can make for social media that's also engaging and like highlights their brand in the best way. Cause like I'm making it for my page, but it's still their brand. And so I want it to like still hold the same integrity as when they're using it.
Yeah.
So
I feel like Precious has done a good job with that, like finding that balance
for
where they can show like literally anything on a very like broad spectrum. Like they might post like a logo and some brand identity stuff for like a really corporate-y business that they did work for, but then like a more fun, like music festival t-shirt or something. And like, I think the templates that they have made and developed help them like
for sure
keep their brand like cohesive, but also like showcasing like their clients work really well. So I don't know, that could be cool for you to explore, you know? But yeah, cool. We end every episode just like going around the table and talking about something that has inspired us lately. So you can go last just so you can kind of think about it and get the gears turning. But who wants to start off?
I can go first. This past week, I had a chance to go out to Kentucky to shoot some Airbnb cabins, which was pretty dope. It was my first time ever being asked to do something like that with being a real estate photographer. But it was pretty cool. They were very aesthetically pleasing, put together really well, and it was in the middle of nowhere, which was great. So
yeah, how did that opportunity come about?
Pretty much. So I shoot for a builder, Frampton Homes. Their lead designer, like interior designer, that picks out like all the cabinetry, the paint colors, pretty much everything inside the house when it comes to designing it. Her husband is a real estate investor, and he was like, dude, I just love your photos and detailed photos you do for them. Would you ever consider taking pictures of my properties? And I was like, yeah. And he just acquired 3 properties in Kentucky, 3 cabins, A-frame. They're not officially A-frames. I forgot what nomadic A-frames, that's what they're called. But they're really dope. Huge front windows. It's definitely somewhere like you want to take like a significant other.
Yeah.
And just vibe out.
So did they pay for you to like go down there?
Yeah, so they pay for everything, pay for flight, pay for a rental car. and then pay me for the work. So
Dang, bro.
I'm excited. I sift through a lot of that stuff over the weekend and hopefully start editing all that stuff tomorrow. Have it to him by the end of the week, hopefully. So
Yeah, that's awesome, bro.
Yeah.
We'll have to talk more about that.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's definitely. I was telling Ethan in the car, I was like, it'd be a good like bro trip to go out there because a lot of hiking. It's in Rogers, Kentucky, which is like one of the main places where people go to rock climb. So it'll be a good place to go with the homies. To
Yeah.
Like if you like nature,
We got to do a little content trip.
a little content trip. So
Real, man.
it'll be,
Yeah, we've been talking about that like
Yeah, we've
so
been talking about
long.
that for 6 years.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Ethan, you want to go?
Yeah, mine. I went up to Minneapolis over the weekend just for the day and just took the film camera and just shot a bunch of stuff. And I don't know, it's a city that like I was talking with my friends while we were there. Like, I don't think I could ever live there, like just personally. But it's a super like beautiful city and like gave me more appreciation for like how sick the Midwest is, like got Minneapolis not too far. I grew up going to Chicago all the time, and Des Moines, obviously being home now, it's just like there's so much cool stuff happening around here that a lot of people still don't know about and maybe they never will, but yeah, it's just pretty sick.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. For me, last night was inspiring. We went to Maverick City, which is like a worship group. And we all either work in the church or have worked in the church as creatives. So like going to like event, like a worship event like that was like super sick. Like, cause I'm also a musician. Like I play the drums at church today. He's a musician. Marquis, you dabble.
I dabble.
You can sing a little bit. I've heard
No,
you.
I can't. Do not do that. Can I sing at all?
You've been sing. I've heard you sing some T-Pain before, bro. But yeah. So I mean, hey,
That's a clip right there.
It is a clip.
That's crazy.
It was a really good time though. Like, so watching their drummer inspired me.
Bro, the sound in that room
Yeah.
Because that's at
Yeah.
that new place.
got me messed
Yeah,
up.
Vibrant
That sounded
Music Hall.
insane.
I've heard
man.
cool things about that, but I've never been.
It's like
This was their second
really
ever
new.
show.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
brand new.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure they're gonna have some really big artists come through next
Yeah.
year.
They did a really good job with that venue.
It looks
Yeah.
cool. I saw the pictures of the inside. It looked really cool.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, so I mean, a couple of my friends like wore some shirts I made there, like Marquis did, which I thought was sick. And then like a couple of my other homies, but then also like I went over to their like merch booth because obviously like as someone that designs like tour merch type stuff, like screen printed stuff, like I just have to buy it, like I love it. I love consuming that stuff and buying it. So got this shirt and like, it's cool. Cause like one of my dreams is to design like merch for like music artists or groups. And, it's cool. Cause like, I'm able to like look at the blank and be like, oh, I know exactly what
Right.
blank that is. Or like, I know what hat they made that on. And like, I was able to do that for like my church. And it's cool because like I saw that they were using the same stuff that like I use on my stuff, and so it was like, hey, I'm doing the right thing. Like if they're doing it, then it's cool. So yeah, I don't know. That was inspiring going to the concert. So Maggie, what about you?
I think this week I was inspired by that shoot that I did yesterday with Ella because it was just, I don't know, the client like just trusted us totally and everything worked out better than I literally could have imagined. And so it was just, yeah, that really inspired me.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you for coming
Yeah,
on.
this was
Thanks
good.
for having me.
This was
Yeah.
great. So yeah, this has been another episode of the Creatives POV podcast. We'll see y'all next time.